All right, excellent people. I am Charles Beatty. This is Aim at Excellence, and I've got another sort of singular topic that I want to talk about today. You have to bear with me with the major project as far as the vision into action goes. As I have mentioned before, I've been very, very busy of late, and so that requires a little bit more preparedness and a little bit more, getting down to really focus and I just don't have the time for it today. I will this weekend, so you can expect to see something new there soon. But I do want to talk about something that I think is interesting and relevant, a little bit of a sort of a life lesson that I think is actually of significant importance that I have learned and that I kind of execute on fairly regularly. And it actually ties very tightly into this comment I made about being very, very busy of late. So the short version of the story is I have been very busy with work because the weather creates delays for me. It's very difficult to do my job in the rain. And so we have to postpone plans as far as schedule goes, but then I have to add on extra days later on some weeks to try to keep myself on schedule so that I don't end up having to bump things back further and further for clients who expect work at a certain time, and then B, if I continually delay, obviously I don't make money if I'm not working. So there's definitely a lot that goes into just sort of like working extra to stay on schedule. Secondarily, there have been some personal life stuff that I've been working through lately that's been very significant. It's nothing that needs to be told the story of today, but it's just the point here is that there's a lot going on and there's a lot of emotional weight behind the things that are going on. And it reminds me of a lesson that I learned many, many years ago that I apply consistently whenever things get tough, and that has really proven to be a very successful strategy when things get hard, things get chaotic. And so the short version of the lesson is when things get tough, the tough keep going, right? That's the whatever the old saying is. Specifically, when things get out of control or difficult emotionally, whatever, the trick is you default back to whatever your plan was in the most basic sense before things got out of control, and you continue to execute on that plan within whatever limits are being currently imposed upon you. So let me give a specific, let me give it more abstract and I'll work towards specific. So let's say you had set a goal and you had a timeline on the goal, and then things got busier and busier and busier and heavier and heavier and heavier, and you got to where you really could not execute on that timeline. Rather than throwing out the entire goal, feeling like you're a failure, dealing with all the negative emotionality associated with that, you simply do any task at all that moves you towards the goal and recognize that the time horizon is no longer important. And you say, I am not going to conform any longer to the time goals that I had originally set with this. Instead, I'm going to keep doing anything at all that keeps me moving towards what I want to do. Anything at all. Doesn't matter what it is. And you have to be very forgiving of yourself. You have to be very okay with this and not see it as a failure, not see it as a step backwards, but see it as continuing progress within the limits of your current situation. And here's the reason why this is relevant. If you do this, whatever the external circumstances are that are causing the struggle to be so significant right now, whatever those are, they will subside. If you are patient, if you are methodical, if you stay focused. And when they do subside, and you now have the time and the energy and the emotional bandwidth and the whole everything to get yourself back on your time horizon that you had before, you will have not quit in the meantime, and you'll even have gotten some work done, and maybe even you'll have learned some lessons from having stayed with it during the stressful time. In particular, one of the most important lessons that I think you can learn there is what is the minimum effective action. I am a big believer in minimum effective action. And if you don't know what that is, if you don't know what your minimum effective action is, then you don't know what the low end of the goal is. Well, a lot of the times, I think some of you may have heard of like the Pareto principle that 80% of the gains come from 20% of the effort. So if that's true, and minimum effective effort is 5%, but maximally efficient effort is 20% based on this principle, then everything beyond 20% effort is going to get you just that last 20% of gains. So let's say your first 5%. Okay, let me back up a step and make sure my numbers are more clear here. You have 80% gain made in the first 20% of effort. So let's say just purely linear, 5%, the first 5% gets you 20% of the gain. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not. That's not the point. So if you drop yourself down to 5% effort and you're getting 20% gain, that's a good minimum effort. And then as you have more bandwidth, you get yourself back up to 20%, and now you're getting 80%. So you have 20% effort and 80% gain, which is very appreciable. And that's that peak of efficiency. Beyond that 20% of effort, you have diminishing returns per unit of effort put in relative to the gain that comes out of it. And so maybe you don't even do more than 20% effort because you've got other priorities in your life or whatever. These numbers are hopefully designed to give you something a bit more concrete to tie into as to why, if your goal was to do 20%, but then life got in the way and you had to drop down, but you didn't drop down to 0, instead you dropped down to 5, you're still getting 20% gain instead of 80% gain. And 20% gain is much better than 0% gain. Plus, you don't lose momentum. Once again, and we can talk about this later, momentum is everything in my world. I have so many things that I do and so many habits that I participate in and so many goals that I have, and all of them benefit from momentum. And even minor movement is better than stopping, because getting restarted is always harder from a 0 than it is from even 1%. That little bit of movement, that's all it takes. Here's a quick story for you about that. This is kind of a fun thing. When I was a kid, my parents had a houseboat, and we spent a lot of time there in the summer. And I used to swim around the boat just because it was a thing to do and I enjoyed it. And I could actually get a rope. We had an anchor line, right? And I could grab hold of the anchor line and I could swim with the anchor line and I could move this big houseboat. This houseboat that requires literally a tractor trailer to move it over land. But I could move this boat with my own power as a child. I mean, literally, 2/3 to 1/2 the size that I am now as an adult man. And I could move this boat. But I will tell you that when I got it moving, it was much easier to move than in the very beginning, right? So I would have to hold this line and kick, like 20 kicks to really get it going. But then once it got going, I could quite literally pull this boat around the cove that it was in with not that much effort once it got going. Not that much. Add the layer of being even more strategic and saying what direction is it already going. Let's say there's wind or current. Let's say it's not an anchor line anymore. Let's say it's a current, but I want to just guide the vehicle through the current. So if I try to pull it against the current as a single human, I'm going to fail miserably. But if I say it's going with the current, I'm going to take it with the current and I'm going to use this line and I'm going to pull it in a direction that is not against the current, that momentum is critical. That momentum is so useful. And so that's the point of today's thought is I find myself right now today having emotionally gotten through some stuff that had been weighing on me for almost a month. And I'm not fully through it, but I'm definitely moving in the right direction. But during it all, I kept doing what needed to be done within my ability to do it that was truncated based on my situation. And because I did so, because I stayed the course to the best of my ability and acknowledged my limitations in that moment, I'm coming out on the backside of it feeling much better about where I've been. And I hope that you could apply these lessons to your life and do the same. I encourage you to do so. Get out there, be excellent.